Hello, BookTube. I'm Peg, the book prize addict. And it's an exciting morning today here. As I woke up, I realized that the Walter Scott Prize, the contenders for it have been announced. That's one thing getting good about living in the U.S. When you wake up, things that have happened in England have already happened during the day there. So I've been busy doing a little research on these. This is one of my very favorite prizes. Well, I like them all. But this is for the Walter Scott for the historical fiction. And I know a lot of people on BookTube here, some of them try to read the long list and the short list, and there'll hopefully be lots of discussions about these. Okay, before I get on to the list, I'm going to talk about a little bit about Walter Scott in case you aren't very familiar with him. There's his picture, handsome devil. Anyway, he was born in Edinburgh, Scotland, in late 1700s, and most of his writing was done during the early 1800s. He actually started out as a poet, but there was too much competition with Byron, so he decided to try his hand at novels, and that worked out great. He ended up writing 28 novels, most of which are kind of forgotten today. Some you may be familiar with is Ivanhoe and Rob Roy, and the most famous and the one that's still the most read is Waverley, which was published in 1814, and it is called by many as the first actual historical novel, and it's subtitled 60 Years Since. So that kind of makes the rules for these historical novels on this list is they have to have taken place at least 60 years ago, and they have to have been published in the last year, in this case 2017, in let's see, England, Ireland, or any place in the Commonwealth. They have to be published there. So there are some American writers, but they've been published also there. So just a little bit about this is sponsored by evidently some very distant relatives of Walter Scott, who are Sir Walter Scott, that is, who are actually a Dutch Duke and Duchess. I don't really know much about the royalty of Scotland. So anyway, but they have also made an effort to restore his ancestral home, which was called a baronial home. I guess he was a baron. Whatever. Anyway, okay. One of the big things about this Waverley when it came out, before that, novels had kind of been looked down on as something rich women did in the afternoons while they were eating bonbons, that sort of thing. But this actually gave some credibility to the novel form, and this historical had some bits of truth to it, so I guess that made it okay. Anyway, so it was published in, as I said, in 1814, and I think it is the only one of the 28 novels that might still be in print. Not sure on that, but anyway, I'm anxious to get to the books that are on it. Now, there are 13 books on it on the list, so I am only going to do half of them today and then do some more research on the other half. But I'll go through these. Let's see, here we go. Okay, the first one I'm going in alphabetical order as they're listed by the author. Incidentally, I'll put a link to the website below so you can look at all of them and read about them yourself if you want. Anyway, a lot of these we've heard of in other prizes, I'll warn you. Okay, the first one is The Clocks in This House All Tell Different Time. This was on the Costa debut for the debut novel short list. That was the one, I believe, judged by Simon Savage, and so I read it during that time, and it is really a great book. It has the best, I don't know how to explain it, atmosphere or tone of it It takes place in the 1920s in England. That's after the First World War. And it takes place in this forest outside of London. And a young girl is taken there with some other kids. It's very strange in this eerie atmosphere. And there are four disfigured soldiers from the war. And it almost has a feel of a fairy tale, but it's very eerie and strange. Anyway, so if you like books with atmosphere, you'll like that one. Okay, next we have Birdcage Walk by Helen Dunmore, who I talked about just yesterday in suggestions of predictions for the upcoming Women's Prize. Helen Dunmore is unfortunately died earlier this year, but she has won a prize just recently for poetry in the Costa Book Award, where they choose the very best book of all the different categories, and she won on that. And she's also was a winner of the first Women's Prize, which was called the Orange Prize back then. So she has written just about all historical novels, and they're all just great. I really like her. Maybe there's a possibility she can get on the Women's Prize list. That would be great this year too. Okay, anyway, quickly, it takes place in England, but during the French Revolution, late 1700s, of a young woman who marries a man who's a builder, an architect builder, and he's building the first terraced houses overlooking a river in England. And she's a radical and is really for the French Revolution and the people, and he's the very opposite because it interferes with his business. So it looks like there's a contentious marriage there and other things. So I'm reading this anyway, so I'm very glad to see it on there. Okay, next we have Manhattan Beach, which I also just talked about yesterday as a pick that my little group of Eric and Anna and I all want to be on the Women's Prize list that's coming out a week from today. It takes place during World War II in New York, where a young woman works in the Navy Yard as a diver. And you get a lot of atmosphere of that time in New York, 1920s, the gamblers and the nightclubs and all the gangs, all the things going on. I had just started it for my other review, and I really liked the opening chapter. She's just a girl then, and goes to the visit with a business partner with her father, and there's a lot of foretelling of what will come. I thought was really well set up in that chapter. I'm looking forward to reading the rest of it. Okay. We have The Last Man in Europe, and this is one I really hadn't heard of, but sounds good. It's about George Orwell, anyway, and his writing of 1984. Evidently, he was in this old dilapidated farmhouse in an island off Scotland while he wrote it. So this not only talks about the writing of it, but goes into literature and the value of literature, etc. So this looks to be very interesting. Okay, we have Sugar Money by Jane Harris. This one is not published in the U.S. yet. It will be the first week in April, so I'll either wait till then or order it from Book Depository. Anyway, this Jane Harris wrote a novel previously called The Observations that won or was listed on the for the Women's Prize, and she's just not too long ago wrote one called Gillespie and I that I really liked. It was one of those where you have kind of a untrustworthy narrator and you're not really sure what happens. I'd be interested if anybody has read it. But okay, back to the prize. We have Philip Kerr's Prussian Blue, who I've talked about several times for other prizes. It's actually a mystery, but a very literary one. And it deals, he writes a series called the Bernie Gunther novels. And Bernie Gunther, most of them took place during World War II in Germany. And Bernie is a German himself, but does not approve of the Nazis and what they're trying to do. So he is different things. He's a detective at some points, and he's in the SS for a while. But in this one, it starts out later in the 1950s on the French Riviera, where he's working as a handyman, not doing real well, but and he's drawn into some subversive activities. But one of the main things is it has a double story with a story from the 1930s. In Bavaria, Hitler had a mountaintop retreat there that he often went to, and it's called the Berghof. And a lot of his higher people that worked in with him also had mansions around there, and this was a real place. And there's a murder that happens there that Bernie Gunther gets into, and it's just really well done. Speaking of that, just after I had read this and heard about this place, this retreat of Hitler's that he went to, I came upon this other book. Now, this isn't on the list, but it's just a little extra here called The Taster. And it takes place also during World War II, about a young woman who is hired as a taster with other women of Hitler's food. He was like paranoid that somebody was going to try to poison him. So their job was to taste his food ahead of time. So it's just interesting that both these novels came out about this retreat in Bavaria. Evidently, he probably must have spent a lot of time there. Okay, that's all I have for today. I will do some research on the others and let me know if there's any you like or what you think of this list. Be back later. Bye.